to you to take away later. Just pop your email, either a business card to me or write it down on the feedback form, and then I will make sure that I send that out to you in the next couple of days. And you're welcome to, of course, share that in your school board. All right, let's get ready to roll. We're talking about building a circle of community champions, corporate champions, sponsors, and partners to really help you fund your rural projects. Now, in terms of who I am and what gives me the authority to speak on the topic, I'll give you a little bit of an introduction of myself in a moment, but I just wanted to make sure that you all knew that for those, if there are any tweeters in the room here? Okay, so you know the tweet hashtag is on the screen there for today, and of course you can tag this symposium as well. If you want to receive the handouts, you can either text me at the phone number there or give me your email. All right. In terms of myself, how many of you have had more than one career profession in your life? Let's see a show of hands. Any of you more than 5? Okay, I think there should be an award at 7 or something because I'm there. My first career was actually in jail, so I spent the first 10 years. Yes, I know, she almost choked on her muffin. The first career that I had was in jail. I was a correctional officer, so I was on the other side of the bar, folks. And I was a correctional officer in Ontario, just outside of Toronto, where we're from. And I loved working in corrections, but quickly learned that it was an environment that didn't really support my vision around learning and changing behaviors, and it didn't really support my belief about the importance of kindness, acceptance, and respect. I then went on after working in adult institutions and worked with young offenders. One of the programs that I ran, actually, Spruce Lane program, which was in Ontario, was an educational program. So the kids were in custody, medium secure custody, and we had an on-site classroom. And it was phenomenal to be part in a very, very tiny community. Has anyone ever heard of Acton, Ontario? No? It's very small, isn't it? And this man knows where it is. Very small community, and that's where Spruce Lane was there for many, many years. May still be there, and they had a wonderful education program. The next part of my career, after I left the correctional system, I went back to school, got a master's degree in conflict analysis and management, and became a mediator. I actually opened up my own company. We were living in Fort McMurray at that time, had a mediation company. Also did a lot of work with schools, teaching kids how to resolve conflict peacefully, resolving the occasional conflict that would come up in the school system, and of course teaching conflict management skills to teaching professionals as well, because obviously teachers deal with a lot of uncomfortable conversations with parents. Would you agree with that? They're not always happy conversations. And then from there, I really pursued my passion, which was speaking. And I've been training and speaking to audiences around the world for the last 15 years. And my big joy is actually speaking to kids in schools. And I do that with my dog, Toby. Isn't that interesting? And I'm not a dog trainer, let's just put that out there right now. But what I did find is that animals have this incredible way of modeling what unconditional kindness looks like and unconditional acceptance look like. So I started bringing Toby, who is the star of several of my books. You'll see them on the screen in a moment. Isn't he the cute dog in the middle on Toby's Terms? That's where you all go, oh, oh, those of you at home, you got to say it too. And On Toby's Terms was really a book about how this dog became one of my most profound teachers in life. There's 3 of them. My grade 1 teacher, Miss Barrett, who helped this very shy, painfully shy child actually start to feel comfortable and safe in school. And then there was grade 9, Ms. Aristicatus, who wore open-toe shoes, funky clothing, and let us sit on the desk for about 4 minutes while we had a debate on Fridays while the principal went in between classrooms so we know we're safe. But what she did was actually, she was the reason that I chose a career in correctional officer role. She was the reason that I became confident, loved school, developed a passion for writing, and I didn't realize it then in grade 9. But as an adult, after writing now 5 books and being featured in 6 others, I realized the importance of all of those mentors that we meet in our life, and many of them are in schools. I want to say to you all that your role that you play in the education of children is so important, and you are probably somebody's hero, just like Miss Barrett and Ms. Aristicatus were my heroes. Last year, I did a project called Letters to My Mentors, and I wrote to all the people who have impacted my life in some way. Sue Ermish, who taught me Highland dancing, Mrs. Fish, my piano teacher. Isn't it amazing all these years later? I could describe what Mrs. Fish's house looked like, how her facial expressions were when I pressed a wrong key. They were mentors. And of course I wrote to Ersticatus. And sadly, Miss Barrett's no longer with us because she was 104 when she taught grade 1. I think my mom said she was 50. But when you're 5, 50 seems a little old. I'm turning 50 this year, so I take it all back. And these were the important mentors in my life. And then, of course, my dog became a huge teacher for me around kindness. So I wrote those books. On Toby's Terms is actually becoming a motion picture. Isn't that crazy? In a good way? All right, let's talk about the topic we're here to talk about today, which is all around building corporate partners and champions. Now, I want to hear from a few of you. What drew you to this workshop? You have a lot of great workshops to choose from. What drew you to this workshop? Yes?
Lack of funding from the government.
Oh, how many of you can relate to that? Lack of funding from the government. Right, it's the era that we live in right now is really requiring us to be creative and innovative, isn't it? What else drew you to this workshop? And thank you for that. Any other thoughts? Yes?
The importance of connectedness in the community, that the school in and of itself is not totally and completely and wholly responsible for education, but it's the community. So
Yes.
we do that together.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I love about rural communities. I lived in Boyle, Alberta. How many of you know where Boyle is? That's pretty small until I moved to Plamondon. Does anyone know where Plamondon is? That's really small. Those were some of the favorite places I've ever lived. And I would agree with you that schools are the hub of, that's where Girl Guides happened. That's where the seniors had some meetings. That's where the book club met. The library was located there. So in our rural communities, they really are a hub of so many things happening. And many of the groups that are using space in your schools actually have their own partners and sponsors that schools can start to leverage. And a lot of schools are not looking at partnerships that way, about who's in our space right now, who are they working with, what corporate partners and champions do they have, and how might we leverage those partners. I'll give you an example. One rural community had, I think it was either Boys and Girls Club or Girl Guides, but one of those clubs that met twice a week, I think it must have been Boys and Girls Club, twice a week. They had a partner, and I believe it was Sobeys, and this community didn't have a Sobeys. They had a co-op, a very small one with one till. And so Sobeys was actually providing the juice and cookies and the snacks for this twice a week program in the school. What the school did was talked to the Boys and Girls Club who were using space to say, I wonder if there's a way that we could leverage your partnership with Sobeys to help us with some of our needs. And they had identified a few events that they had coming up in the school, and the Boys and Girls Club then leveraged their relationship with Sobeys to bring them on as a partner for the school, to donate funds and to donate products. How cool is that? Has anyone done that before, used other partners that you have to leverage them? Okay, so that's one big strategy. So if we can get the slides up here, I'm going to go through a couple of points and that I want to talk about right away. Is imagine having businesses approach you. How many of you have to go and approach businesses to find support? Hands up really high so we can see. Lots of you. What would it be like if it was different? Where businesses actually came to you to provide support, donations, grants, money, services, time, and people. What would that be like for you in your role? Let's hear for a few of you. How would that impact your projects, your school, your community, if they were approaching you? Say again? Big time. Big time impact in a positive way. And what would that do for you if you actually had them coming to you saying, we want to support your school? How can we help?
It would allow us to have a more open idea of what we wanted, because they came to us, then we could say, oh, well, what do we need? What do we want? That type of
Yes.
stuff.
Thank you.
Positive outlook that would make a difference in the sort of things that we would be able to fund.
Yes, absolutely. Huge impact. And you could use that time elsewhere. I love that. Great answer. Thank you. So that's what we want to create, is an environment where people start approaching us. A little bit about my background. I've actually sat on all four sides of the money conversation or the sponsorship conversation. I've mentioned that I worked in corrections. When I left corrections, I worked in the nonprofit sector for a while as an executive director of a women's shelter in Fort McMurray. And I also worked for other nonprofits. And my role in those jobs, working for FCSS and for the women's shelter, was to actually go out and find partners, go out and find money, grants, sponsors, donors, donations, value in kind products and services. So I sat on a table as a person requesting funds. I later had a job with the provincial government when it was then called Alberta Family and Social Services, which is a number of years ago, 1995 I think it was. And my job there was to provide funded agencies that were receiving funds through social services. I was the person who did the request for proposals and then did the funding contracts and actually gave them their money. And I loved that job until I had to claw back thousands of dollars from one organization who didn't do what they were required to do with their core standards. And so my solution was I quit. I didn't like that part of the job. And so that was the second role I played. The third role is that I'm a small business. I've had my own company for 19 years almost, and I get asked a lot for donations. Small businesses get a lot of phone calls, proposals, letters, requests for me to speak at no fee, for example, which we do a lot of. We do that to schools. That's one of our give backs. Actually, we also work with sponsors who pay for the books in our programs to go into your schools, which is a great way to do that, so schools get to receive that. And then the fourth way is that because we have our kindness initiative, which is called A Million Acts of Kindness, and we're going around the globe inspiring 1 million acts of kindness in schools, workplaces, and communities. And that whole tour, which is 100 communities launching in September across North America, is going to be funded with other people's resources, much like I'm going to talk to you about today. So I can talk to you about 4 different perspectives. Let's go over what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how to build these long-lasting partnerships, how to become a champion for sponsors so that they want to come and find you. They want to support you with value in kind, which might be services or products, and it might be money. More importantly, they might also use their leverage to bring other partners into the mix. And I'll give you some examples of that in a moment. One of the things that happens when you're a champion for other people, other businesses, other companies, is that it creates what my friend Sean Duperrin calls a cycle of reciprocity. So as we're out there supporting other people, being a champion, just like you saw at the break here, the organizers were recognizing their partners. The MC Donna thanked the partners that were funding the coffee breaks. That's one way of recognizing and supporting our partners, and there's many other ways. When you are a champion, it often ripples back to you. We'll talk about why you want to be a champion, how to be a connector, and how to share your influence to help other people. What I'd like to do is to take 2 minutes. How many minutes? 2 at your table. So if you're all alone, you can either talk to yourself, or it would be way more fun to join a table where there's somebody else. But I just want to have you talk and share ideas about what are something innovative. So I'm talking something quirky, out of the box. You didn't think it would work, but it did. Some kind of innovative way that you received either donations, grant, funding, or sponsorship for one of your projects. So I'll just set my timer for 2 minutes. We're going to come back and share on that and then talk a little bit more about how you can do that in your schools. So 2 minutes.
Not schools, but I belong to a lot of nonprofits. I'm part of directors, and one of the things was a humane society. We needed money for our, we built a huge new facility, and we had a project called Raise the Roof. I don't know if any of you ever heard of that. Yeah, it's a comedy thing. And we raised, in this small rural community, $30,000. Well, 36 was our gross profit, but $30,000 for a community, and that is really something. We had corporate sponsors. You wouldn't believe what we got. So, yeah, they came to us, and they're still starting to come to us. So, yeah. I don't know how it would be really great if you could leverage something like that into your schools, because that would, yeah, that's a lot of money for a small area.
I can say that we have sponsors not to our division, Prairie Rose, but to schools in different areas. Kind of thing like Special Areas has done some donating or whatever to help some of our small schools, and Drowning Ford Ranch up north a little bit, right? And just think of something else. And Foremost Community has started, the community and the school work together on a lot of things, so there's been a lot of support money into the school from the community to help their projects, like Rachel's Challenge and stuff like that. And so,
We just recently had Heart and Stroke Foundation offer to donate AEDs to all the schools in our districts if you just kind of applied for it, and it was a part of Heart Month in
So
February.
about one more minute.
And we actually got we've got AEDs I think in 5 different schools, including colony schools too. So that was kind of an impressive initiative that they had. Don't know that we started it, but it was impressive anyways.
All right, and for those of you at home, I'd like you to think about what are the innovative things that you have done in your school divisions. And feel free to email me those. One of the things that I often do after a seminar is I create a frequently asked questions document, because I know that when you leave here, questions are going to happen. So you can email me those, you can text me those, and I will create an FAQ document and send that out to everybody. All right, so let's bring you all back to the group here and hear from 2 or 3 people. What are some of the innovative ways that you have brought partners into the mix to support one of your rural education projects or community projects? Let's hear from a couple of you. Who'd like to share? It's your time to brag. Awesome, thank you. Oh, innovative or risque. I already like it.
So, I was principal of a small K-4 school in Thorhild, Alberta, where waste management was coming in, and it was a real hot issue in the town. There's some people here that will probably, yeah. So anyway, so they were coming into town. The town was very split in regards to support or not support of this organization coming in, but they were coming in regardless. And so they're coming in, and we knew that they had an open wallet coming in. And I knew that I needed to have a school sign in front of my school, and our parents were raising money for this for years, getting $500 here, $100 there, and here comes Waste Management with $10,000. We knew they had an open wallet for us, right? So, of course, I connected with them and said, come on in, we'll take your money. So we invited the partnership in, knowing that they were there already, and knowing that it's going to be a little bit of political suicide. But having said that, we had to also then have conversations with the community and the parents saying, you know what, they're coming anyway. They have an open wallet. We need to be partners with these people, so let's use their money. But, you know, that may not sound good, but it's there, and so take advantage of what's there.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. One other person want to share? Thank you.
So I'm not here as a school representative, I'm here as a municipal representative, but the one I will share is in the town of Olds, they built a community learning campus, which is a partnership between the college and the town of Olds and Mountain View County. And because of all the linkages that were tied together, there was a great desire for naming rights to facilities, large and small. And that was part of the way of funding that. I don't have the exact number, but it was substantial. And it was because you had so many different partners at the table that business saw it as another place to be a partner in.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you for sharing those. One of the things I wanted to mention is my favorite experts who actually talk on the topic of sponsorship is the partnership group, and they're out of Calgary. Some of you may have seen their workshops before. They're fabulous, and I highly recommend that you go to that. They're wonderful for school divisions and for municipalities because they teach you actually the whole process of sponsorship from start to cash in the bank. And they're fabulous, and they have a conference every October. I'll send you the details, but it's in Calgary, and it's called the Western Sponsorship Congress. I highly recommend that municipalities, elected officials, school division personnel go to that, because it changed my complete understanding of sponsorship and how we build relationships. Let's go back to the slides and work through some more content using these examples as places to think from. Now, when we think about relationships, they are essential in sponsorship. They are absolutely essential. I did a huge project in Fort McMurray that started off as a 3-hour seminar and became a 3-day event because we kept getting money. Isn't that a great situation to be in? And it was basically called the Wood Buffalo Community Expo, and we had unusual partners for that. There was the typical partners. Who would you guess would be a partner in Fort McMurray? Right, Suncor, the oil company, Syncrude, they all came in. What I loved is they didn't come in with the biggest purse. They allowed some of the other businesses to also take a lead. We attracted a whole bunch of partners that we'd never worked with before to put together this community event, which basically meant that we bussed in all the students from all of the surrounding communities, including flying them in from Fort Chipewyan, to be a part of this initiative. It was a fabulous 3-day event. What the learning was for me on this was how important relationships are. That event was in 2007, and I was contracted to be the organizer of that. 7 years later, last year, when we were doing our Paws Across Canada, the beginning of our Million Acts of Kindness tour, I went back to a lot of those partners. And because I had stayed in relationship with them, all I had to do was pick up the phone and say, I'm working on another project. I think it's a good fit. Can I get some of your time? Come on up and meet with me. I didn't have to go through that whole process that can take 6 months, a year, 2 years of relationship building. Let's talk a little bit about where we can build relationships with potential partners. First of all, we have to think about who our potential partners and sponsors might be. Now there's the obvious. What would be obvious in your community? Let's just name off a few. Let's give some of your businesses a shout out here. Who are some of the obvious partners in your community or sponsors? Let's hear. Yes. Okay, so Walmart, Canadian Tire. Perfect. What about smaller communities that may not have a Walmart or Canadian Tire? Who might be your fit? Kinsman Legion. I love service clubs. Did you see how much I love them? I love service clubs. They are huge. Rotary, if you have Rotary, we have gotten so much support. And don't forget, I'm not a school or a nonprofit. I am a for-profit business. And we're having no problem attracting partners. So when you're a school or a nonprofit or a school council, that really opens doors that we actually don't have. Service clubs are wonderful because they not only can support you with dollars, they also have a team of people who are so darn invested in their community that they'll give you time, they'll give you their family members time, and that many of them also have jobs. So what happened is they leave the Rotary Club. This is what happened to us. We had Tim Hortons on our list. It's on my vision board for 3 years. Try and get a hold of someone at Tim Hortons in sponsorship. Has anyone ever tried that? It's really tough. You can't find out even who to talk to. I was speaking at a Rotary Club in BC, and this lovely gentleman came up after and said, I love your project. I love that you're going into schools. I would like to be a part of that. I don't know how you could help. Do you see a fit for Tim Hortons? Let me just pick myself up off the floor. Let me think. Yes. And he was the franchise owner of 3 and put me immediately into contact with the head of sponsorship. Immediately. Email introduction. In 7 minutes after leaving that meeting, we had a connection. How powerful is that, folks? Isn't that powerful? Because now we've sort of been endorsed by someone in the company. So building relationships is huge. Service clubs are fabulous. One more example of who in your community might be considered a potential partner or sponsor for you. Say again? Yes, banks. You bet. All of you have a bank. This is actually, I'm really glad you brought up banks because that is one of the most missed opportunities, I believe, in communities. Each of us deals with a bank or two personally. Is that true? The parents of the students in your schools, they all deal with banks. Is that true? Who else deals with banks? The school, the municipality. What's really important is to go to the bank that you do business with. You already have a relationship with them. You have one that's lucrative for them because you pay service charges. Is that true? You have a lot of money tied up in those banks, and that's a relationship that you can leverage. I had never thought of that, actually, until Brent from the partnership group had said, have you gone to your bank? And one of the things we're talking to them about now is actually providing us with the preloaded Visa cards, the gift cards. Do you know what I mean by it's like a Visa card that's loaded with $1,000 or $500, because isn't that as good as cash? Right, so we might not fit into their sponsorship category for sponsorship for certain things, because our bank does a lot of medical type related projects, and our project isn't medical. But they're considering getting behind us right now by giving us a number of preloaded Visa cards that we can use on our tour for gas, meals, hotel, and to give away as prizes to the schools that we go and talk to. Isn't that great? So think about who you have relationships with. Let's go back to the slides again and go through a few more points here. We want to go where our partners are. Here's a challenge for you. I want you to think about your dream sponsor. I'm going to use Walmart for a second, because for many of us, that's a big sponsor. Would you agree? Walmart's big. Banks are big, actually. Think about your dream sponsor. I just want you to take 30 seconds and share with your neighbor who your dream sponsor or two would be. And then for those of you at home, I'd like you to write it down, who your dream sponsor would be. So about 1 minute to just share, and then we'll come back and talk about how do you create that.
Now it's good, yeah? So we're just looking at one-to-one iPad. So I was considering the Source or Walmart are both in Vegreville. So they would be great partners because they have technology in their stores. But if they're unwilling, I guess, to provide much, it would be a tough gig.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Walmart, whether they do or not. But there's lots of London Drugs is one of the biggest suppliers of computers in Canada, which is interesting. But there's lots of local real estate companies too. They're always looking for places, and they're small businesses, guys who want to get involved locally, and oil companies like oil. If you happen to be close to oil and gas, those guys are huge when it comes to putting out money. So,
now, do you need a charitable donation? So we have a parent committee in the
All right, 10
foundation.
seconds.
They need charitable receipts for submitting, or can they tax write it off regardless?
Okay. Let's think about those dream partners that you identified, big sponsors or big partners. You're hearing me use the word sponsor and partner interchangeably. In our business, in Hammond International and Team Toby, we actually refer to our sponsors as partners. This actually came from them. I found that when I was talking to one of the oil companies, they said, we prefer that you use the language partner. Supported by, presented by, not sponsored by. They really like the word partner because when we sponsor, it implies simply writing a check, which can be considered philanthropy, a donation. Partnership means you're in this project together, that they have a vested interest in your lunch program, your new school library, your gym equipment, your new playground, whatever it is that you're working on. If it's considered to be in partnership, they have a really vested interest. If their name is on the gym or on a building, they have a very big interest in making sure that succeeds. Their name is on it. Or if they have plates and benches or things like that. Now let's talk about how we build relationships, because this is key. Have any of you, and you don't have to put your hands up if you don't want, but I'm going to put my hands up. Have any of us in the room ever just sent out blanket proposals? What I mean is it's the same proposal and then we add Joe's name and it's got the gold, silver, and bronze levels. How many of us have done that? Okay, turn to your neighbor and tell them, don't ever do that again. Turn to your neighbor and tell them, this is important. This is so important. Here's why. I've interviewed a lot of partners and sponsors, and I was at a conference, this one I told you about, where they had IBM, Best Buy, Staples, every bank, law firms, you name it. And they said the number one irritant is when you send a generic proposal, and it's even more irritating if it has gold, silver, and bronze. Here is the reason why. It's generic, which means it's not been at all customized for them and what they want to see out of partnership. And it means there's no relationship. One company, one of the biggest companies there, actually said, when we get those, they go through the shredder. It's that fast. And one oil company in a small community told me that they are right now seeing 400 on average proposals a month. Imagine if you're one of those 400, you have to stand out, don't you? So how do we stand out? Powerful relationships. Can we talk about how we build those now? And I'll share what works. With your dream partner, we want to know who our dream partners are. Create a list of who you want to partner with for every activity you've got going on in your school, your core programs, your core needs, and some of your extracurricular activities. Then what you want to do is actually build a list of all the places that you're in partnership with right now. Whether it's a partnership that's in kind, like a community group using your space, like a joint use agreement, whether it's a company that's providing you donations of school supplies. Identify every partner that you have, because another missed opportunity is leveraging those relationships to be more involved with you. We often get what we need from one partner and then we never go back to them and say, we're doing this, this, and this. How could you be a part of that? That's so easy. It's sort of like that 80-20 rule. Does everyone know the 80-20 rule? What we often do is spend all our time creating new relationships and new partnerships. And what we could do is go to the ones we have and increase those. And here is the juice. This is a question that very few people ask. They very rarely go to their current partners and say, here's what our plans are. Who are you in business with that you could bring on to help? Let me share an example. This is not an educational, it is in a roundabout way. With our tour, we have an amazing partner. We have a dog, so we go through a lot of poop bags. Would you agree? In 2 months, we have an amazing poop bag sponsor, the Original Poop Bags. We also have an incredible retail partner, the Petland Canada. And one of the things that we were stumbling on is we wanted to get to some of the bigger pet products. Now, in your world, this is just not pet products, it's educational products and needs. So I talked to Petland Canada and I said, you know, we love our relationship with you and we're trying to get in front of these audiences like Kong and Outward Hound and different pet food manufacturers. Can you help us? And she said, absolutely. We're on the phone with them every day. Did you know that half of them have funds anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 to just give to projects? Where do they go? They come and talk to us because we're in a business relationship with them. So I said, do you think we could have any of those 5 to 15,000? And it was an awkward ask, you can tell by kind of my facial reactions. And she said, we wait for projects to come up. Absolutely, let me see. Her words were, let me see how we can use our relationships with these businesses and manufacturers to help you with your project. Isn't that a great way to do it? So let's think about sharing influence and leveraging the relationships we have. How do we build these in addition to what I've talked about? LinkedIn has been one of my powerful, powerful tools for partnership and business. How many of you are on LinkedIn or you have professionals in your division or municipality that are actively using LinkedIn? Great. It's really important to learn how to, if they're not using it properly, that'll be a great training avenue because LinkedIn is actually where we connect with partners. The big part of partnerships, if they're not local to you, is getting past the gatekeeper. It's getting to the person that you need to talk to. LinkedIn is how I did this last week. I just wanted to give you an example. I wanted to be prepared before I came today. So last week, I did a search on LinkedIn, and I used the words training and development on one search, because that's who hires me to speak. People in schools, businesses who are responsible for training and development or employee education. The second search I did was sponsorship and community investment. That's an important word to write down, community investment. A lot of the big companies now call themselves community relations and community investment, not sponsorship. And I came up with, in about 1 minute, 137 names. How cool is that? Which meant I had 137 names that I could phone up Best Buy because I had a name, Sue whomever. I could phone up McDonald's Canada or Staples Canada or Husky Gas because I now had a name. I didn't have to spend hours researching on the website. I now had a name. And then I went so I looked at what some of them had sponsored in past, and I found that many of them had sponsored projects I love, like Clara's Big Ride. And so I sent them an email, one of the LinkedIn requests saying, I love the project you did. I would really like to stay in touch with you. 90% of the people accepted the LinkedIn request. Now, to set up a phone call is much easier. Would you agree with that? Turn to your neighbor and say, that is a cool tip. All right. Yes.
Talk about the balance between using social media and actual in-person relationships. I'm biased in one way. As if you didn't hear me, I've been told that, and I believe it, that relationships formed on the internet are very fragile.
Yes, they are. Yes. So what I use social media for is to get the name. I never go and pitch them on, I might say to them, I'd love to set up a phone call with you, and I have a paragraph of what we're doing. Because they're going to say, well, what do you want to call me about? And then it feels really schwarmy if you just say, I'd like to set up a phone call with you, because then they're left to make all these assumptions. Oh, they want money. That's the assumption. So I just say, what I do is it's all about them. I'd love to set up a phone call to learn more about Bell Mobility's or CBIC's marketing goals for 2015 and what you're looking at in terms of community partnerships. Can I get 15 minutes of your time to understand that better? Notice that I didn't talk about I have a program, I have a tour. I just want to learn more because I want to know if they're even a fit. If they're not a fit, I don't want to spend a lot of time of theirs and mine building a relationship that might not be valuable to them. Noticed I said valuable to who? Them. Right. So that's that. Does that answer the question about fragility, being fragile in our relationships and how to overcome that? We don't sell on social media. We don't build relationships publicly. And all I do on social media is good, positive things. I would never put a negative comment. You know, I was the only sort of negative, I was flying on WestJet once and I was struck by lightning. Isn't that kind of a cool story? 3 times in one flight. So I wrote a blog, it was a really good blog, and I shared that. WestJet was out there tweeting it, but notice that it could have been an upsetting story, but what I did was talked about, this is a company that trains their staff well, because I didn't know what that orange flash was and why the plane felt like it was tipping over, but they came on all relaxed saying, guys, it happens all the time. We were just hit by lightning, no biggie. And I talked about how they were exquisite at communication. That's what being a champion is. Going out and talking, spreading good news, good gossip about the people you're in love with. And by in love with, I mean, we want to really like our partners. We want to go and tell other people how good they are. And that gets around that fragile relationship as well, when we make sure that we're doing good things to support them and that we support what they're doing outside of our project. So if you have, let's say the co-op is funding something in your school, and they also just did a community event for a children's play program, and you happen to hear it was a great activity, why don't you go out and say, hey, I heard that was a great activity from co-op, way to go, good work. Make sense? So LinkedIn is powerful. We want to be a good champion for our partners and really, really tweet them out, share them with other people. We start off by knowing our needs. This will all be in the handouts that I give you. You have to know what you need in your school, because often in conversation, let's say you're tweeting out one of your partners and they then get into a conversation with you about what you're doing. They might say, what are some of the needs that your school division has? So we have to be prepared to answer that. So I have a checklist that I'll give you all around your different needs so that you can be organized for those calls, for those questions that people ask you. A lot of times they happen just happenstance in a conversation. We want to be able to pull that up right away. One of the biggest tips that I can offer you is go where your partners are. We get newspapers every week and we see their events that are being sponsored by different companies, right? One of the groups we wanted to get in front of was Devon, because I love what they're doing to support school projects. In where I lived in Lac La Biche area, they were doing some amazing work, and I wanted to get in front of Devon and just build a relationship. My husband was flipping through the Lac La Biche Post and saw that Devon was the main sponsor of a safety conference. So where do you think we went that night? To the safety conference. And it was great, because guess who was there? Devon and the 2 ladies who manage their sponsorship and partnership department. I got to meet with them right there. Isn't that a great way to do it? Then we linked on LinkedIn. Now I can just pick up the phone and call them. Go where your partners are, follow the news, see how you can attend events that they're sponsoring. This is an important activity around building partnerships and leveraging relationships, is think about who you already know. Each of you in your school division, in your school, in your municipality, you all do business with different people. You have a hairstylist, or most of us do anyways. My husband said he's not going to need one for much longer, but hairstylist. We have dentists. We buy our groceries somewhere. We fill our car with gas somewhere. We buy things for our kids somewhere. Write a list of everywhere you do business. Then write a list of everywhere that your school does business. And that could be a big project. Your finance department, whoever's taking care of accounts payable, receivable, is going to have to help you there, but they'll be a great resource of letting you know who you already have relationships for. Then start to look at who could we start talking to, one person at a time, to build the relationship. How can we be better champions for them and the good work they're doing for our school so that we stay front of mind? We're not that one of 400 proposals they might get a month. They know who we are. In fact, they know who we are and they know a name to contact. Building those relationships at every level in our school and municipality is critical. What we do with meaningful relationships is we want to keep our commitments. One of the things that I heard from sponsors time and time again is when they often hear this, they'll say, "Great, can you send me more information?" And the person is really excited. They say, "Yes, absolutely." It's Friday at 3. And the person, us, will say, "Great, I'll have it to you for Monday at 9. How often do you think Monday at 9 happens? Right, because we don't go home and work on that proposal on Saturday night, and it has to usually go through other people. So we've let them down already once. And if we didn't tell them on Monday, it's not coming on Monday, now we've actually set a precedence of what we are like to do business with. And what could they be thinking? And this is coming from sponsors. I've interviewed them on this. They start thinking, is our logo really going to make it on the slides that day? Are they going to be prepared when all our staff from the bank show up in their Bank of Nova Scotia t-shirts? Will we be properly introduced? That because they didn't send their own proposal to get in front of us. Keep our commitments. It's absolutely essential. Oops. The next thing we want to do is avoid the premature ask. Turn to your neighbor and say, "This one is important." Turn to your neighbor, "This one's really important." Tell them this one's important. Avoid the premature ask. What often happens in conversations is we get into a conversation with a business, a service club, a local business, a big dream sponsor, and we let them talk for a few minutes about them, and then who do we turn the attention to? Us. "I've got this project. Oh my gosh, it's revolutionary. This is going to impact thousands of lives. It's the future of tomorrow." And we give them all this information when we haven't yet learned what their priorities are, what they value, what's meaningful to them. And then we start asking for money before we've had to build a relationship. It's sort of like going on a date and you're at dinner and you're saying, "Wow, I've got this great idea for a marriage and I want to buy a boat and I want to buy a house. Can I sign you up?" Most of us would run, right? It's sort of like that. We don't want to do the premature ask and turn them off. Because how we do something is how we do everything. That's not my quote, but I know that it stands true. How we approach one thing is often how we do it in other scenarios. A partner will start thinking, where's the mutual reciprocity here? We want to find ways to support our partners that are unexpected. Stand out for them. One of the things we did once, we were on media. Media are great partners to have, by the way, because media is so expensive if you have to buy it. I would strongly encourage you all to spend time and energy on your media partners, not only local, but your other providers like CTV, Bell, all of those media partners, they're critical. 3 minutes, I get 3-minute, 4-minute, 5-minute segments all the time. Our last tour was in front of just under 10 million people. We reached 10 million through media in just over a week. That's, if I had to buy that kind of marketing, we couldn't, just put it that way. It's at least $30,000 to buy a couple of minutes of media. What we did is I actually mentioned one of our partners on CTV. Let me tell you, they phoned me, the company owner phoned me, they were circulating all over Twitter, and then they came back a week later and said, we really want to play with you more. How can we support you? What do you need? Because we just were an unexpected champion for them. Be a connector. When you met someone that you think, wow, such and such a person from the co-op or from the local bank really needs to know this person. Make referrals to their business. We buy our office supplies at this local store. I'd love for you to go there. And then I often will do an email introduction. I do that all the time. I get both people's permission first because you don't want to be schwarmy or spammy. That'll really ignite frustration for people. But I'll phone up the bank and say, you know, I've got a couple of people that I've just met that are new to the community. They're looking for somewhere to do some banking. Would you be okay if I send you an email introduction? And I do the same thing with the person, and I connect them. Be a powerful connector. Recognize your partners, not just during the sponsorship or the campaign or the event that you're doing or the launch or the unveiling of the equipment in the playground. Recognize them a lot in many different ways. And here's the biggie. Ask people that you're in relationship with to share their influence for you. What I mean by this is in a newsletter at a school or in a municipal newsletter, you could say, we just so love the support that we received from such and such a sponsor. I would love you to all go on, put a comment on their Facebook page about how having this new playground equipment has impacted you and your family. Better yet, can you take a picture of you and your family enjoying the equipment? And you plant seeds of how people can be a champion. I will tell you, when a company goes on their Facebook page and sees 30 posts from families of a school who they just provided money for a playground, they're thinking, wow, look at the impact we've made. Wow. How can we support them and continue to support them? This was fantastic. What else can we do? Let people, I actually have a circle of champions in our business, very close business colleagues. When we're doing something to recognize my partners, I email or phone my corporate champions and I say, you know, I really want to share some love to the original poop bags. I've got a couple of posts. Would you be willing to like it, share it, or comment on it? And they'll say, it's not a good fit for my Facebook people, so no. But I will go onto your Facebook page and make a comment about how great your partners are. They always have the right to say no. It's really powerful, though, when your influencers become the champions of your partners. Are you getting some value from these ideas? Good, good. This is what I love about this. Everything we're talking about right now is really no cost. It's time, but it's not spending you're not spending money to make this powerful work happen. Any issues, this is key. If anything falls off the track in a partnership, oh my gosh, you've got to address it right away. Don't let partners find out from the media or social media that something went weird. It just makes it really hard to go back to them next time, because in relationships, we cooperate, we collaborate, we resolve issues together. Make sure you resolve them. If you have a heads up that maybe you're holding an event and you've only got 20 people registered and you had promised them 100, 2 weeks before you can say, we're really struggling. Go and ask them for help. We're struggling to get hearts and seats. Notice I didn't say bums and seats. We're trying to get hearts and seats. That's what my friend Colin calls it. And we're only having 20 and we promised 100. We'd love your ideas. They have things they can access. They might say, let us put an ad in the newspaper for you. We have a staff going on TV next week. Let me have them put a couple plugs in. We'll use that time for your event instead of what we were going to talk about. Let them help you by sharing the challenges with them. And then think and plan beyond the one-time event. Always be thinking about how can we continue to be in relationship with this partner for the long term. It costs partners and businesses a lot of time and money to implement funding or support of any kind. They have to pull a lot of their internal resources together to make that happen for you. When they think we could be in a longer-term relationship with your school, your municipality, what they start thinking is this is not just a one-time deal. We can actually leverage our resources longer and across the board. And then they see how you're supporting them and they think, wow, we totally want to do that. The next part is asking. Here's a couple of tips on the ask. Probably the most uncomfortable thing for us to do. Would any of you agree that asking for support, money, time, resource can be awkward? Put your hands up if you agree. Those of you at home, nod, and I'll pretend that I can see you nodding. Most of us get so far in a conversation, and then it's like, oh, there's the question. Right? And we get really uncomfortable with it. Just remember a piece of advice that somebody gave me. Actually, it was a gentleman that was sharing the shuttle to the rental car yesterday. He's a salesman, and he's here attending a conference actually in Calgary in the golfing industry. And he said, Charmaine, you know what? Every conversation you have is a potential sales conversation. So I wonder if you change your mindset and just look at every conversation is about relationship. And in doing so and expressing your project thoroughly and with passion and excitement, that's in a sense what we do in a sales conversation. And I thought, wow, that really makes help. I'm just going to shift my thinking so I don't get so uncomfortable. Now I really love that part of the conversation, the ask. What do you think is important when you're asking somebody to support your project, naming rights on a building, a recycling program? What is important about how and when you ask them? Let's hear from a few of you. How and when you ask, what's important? What's in it for them? Say that really loud so people at home can hear you.
What's in it for them?
Yes, what's in it for them? Very important. Because they want to see an ROI, a return on investment, in their marketing support or financial support for your project. What's in it for them? What's a couple other things that we want to make sure we do when we ask? Or about how we approach the ask? We don't want to do it prematurely, right? Getting to the right person. Yes, to the decision maker. Say again? Yes, absolutely. Expand the conversation. I never ask closed-ended questions in these conversations. Closed-ended are would you, could you, will you, won't you. They always answer with a yes or a no. They don't foster the relationship. If you can ask questions that start with, what grade am I going back to now, folks? The 5 W's and the H. What grade is that? I use it all the time. How many years later? I think it was grade 2. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. Those are your powerful questions for relationship and asking. And just remember, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. But what if you ask and they say yes? What if? Important for us to practice our ask so it rolls off our tongue with ease and comfort, so our passion shines through. Some people spend way too much time talking about their ask. It turns into a 27-minute presentation. Keep it really short. Help them understand what you're asking for. Because if it's foggy to them, they start finding objections. Does that make sense? When it's foggy, they start finding every reason not to support you. When it's clear, they find every reason that your project is a connect for them. So really clear and succinct. And don't be so attached to the yes. When you're attached to the yes, it comes across as scarcity thinking or desperation. Back to the date. Some of us may have been on a date where the person seems a little clingy. Anyone remember dates like that? They're really desperate. How fast do we want to get out of that conversation? Turbo fast. And all importantly, be authentic. Now, we've talked about building relationships. Some tips on the ask. I'm going to give 3 resources that I love, and then we'll pull this together. These might be resources you don't know about, and I want to make sure you know about. How many of you have heard of Field Law Community Fund? Yay, nobody knows. Field Law Community Fund, write that down. Every year in the spring, so coming up not too far from now, Field Law, that has offices all over Alberta, has a community fund. Many of the people who apply for that community fund are municipal groups and organizations and schools and projects. And they give away several $1,000s, and one that just got a project was $30,000. Is that kind of nice for your school? Field Family Law, they're very committed, and I love how they work with groups to make it super easy, and it's a funding that schools are entitled to apply to. Aviva Foundation, AVIVA, it should be coming up shortly as well. They do 2 cycles a year, I think. I'll put the websites and links in there for you, but they also have a community fund, and they fund lots of different projects for children, for families, schools, and communities. Again, super easy application process. And one of the ones that received it a couple of years ago was a school project. I think it was for a playground or some kind of new outdoor activity equipment. And the children, the students actually did a video. I'll tell you, I went on every day and voted for that one, even though I had one of my own up there too. That it was so compelling. This video that these students made just won me over, and I thought this group needs to have that funding. Their kids were so invested in it. The other one that I wanted to mention is shopandsshare.ca. This is a website here in Alberta. They're in Calgary. They work with a lot of big retailers like Amazon, Canadian Tire, Roots, you name it. There's hundreds of them. What happens is you can go in and plug it. There's no cost for school boards to do this and nonprofit agencies. You don't have to be a registered charity. So school councils can do this. You go in and just plug your school in there. It's very simple to fill out the form. And you can encourage people when they shop on Amazon or at Kohl's, Chapters, any of those other websites, they can click the button to have a donation sent to your school or to your nonprofit. So for example, I just went shopping on the other day and bought some things that I needed from Amazon and another online store, and I clicked a button for one of my favorite charities, so now they get a commission, they get fundraising from that sale. Isn't that a great way to easily do that? And you can share that out with your families and your students' families. We've covered a lot in a short period of time. There's a lot of information to take away, but what I really wanted you to cover today was the importance of relationships, and that we can do that with our time, and it doesn't really take money. The importance of being prepared for the ask, knowing what it is we need, and most importantly, leveraging the relationships that we already have to bring them on to help us be able to fund our municipal and our school goals, dreams, visions, projects, and needs for equipment. Now, in terms of where we go next, I promise to send you some information out, so you can give me your email. You can also email me if you want to get in touch with me with any other questions. I'll send an FAQ document out with everybody's questions as I receive them. I always do a follow-up teleclass, 30 days, so I'll send you the details of that. Any questions you have after today, bring them on the teleclass. Bring other people that you want from your division on the teleclass, and we'll go through any questions you have. And again, I want you to remember, if you don't ask, it is always a no. But if you do ask, it could be a yes. How cool would that be? Thank you very much. I'm Charmaine Hammond. Thank you for joining us this morning.